The blood-red sun dipped below the jagged horizon as Lucy Zimmerman's wagon wheels creaked to a stop at the edge of Eldorado Canyon, Nevada. The year was 1876, and the promise of a new life stretched before her like the vast desert, beautiful and terrifying all at once. She had come west with nothing but a trunk of belongings and a determination to escape the suffocating confines of her life back east. "Whoa there," she called to her tired horses, patting their sweaty flanks as she surveyed the dusty main street. Eldorado Canyon wasn't much to look at, a collection of wooden buildings, some leaning precariously, others standing proud against the harsh elements. The gold mines that had once made this place boom were drying up, but there was still enough prosperity to keep the town alive. Lucy climbed down from her wagon, her boots landing with a soft thud in the Nevada dust. At 23, she was neither young enough to be considered naive nor old enough to be taken seriously. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her blue calico dress, though travel-worn, was still respectable. She had come to Eldorado Canyon to take over the millinery shop her late aunt had left her, an unexpected inheritance that had arrived just when Lucy needed an escape most. "Need some help with those horses, madam?" a deep voice called out. Lucy turned to see a tall man approaching. His face was shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes the color of a summer storm. "Thank you, but I can manage," she replied, straightening her spine and lifting her chin. The last thing she needed was to appear helpless within minutes of arriving. The man raised his hands in surrender, a smile playing at his lips. "No offense intended. Name's Cole Patterson. I run the livery stable down the way." He gestured down the street. Couldn't help but notice a new face in town. "Lucy Zimmerman," she replied, offering her hand before thinking better of it. Ladies didn't shake hands with strangers, especially not in the middle of the street. But this was the West, and old rules seemed to matter less with each mile she had traveled from Philadelphia. Cole's hand was warm and calloused as it enveloped hers, a testament to the hard work that defined life out here. "Margaret Zimmerman's niece?" he asked, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You knew my aunt?" "Everyone in Eldorado Canyon knew Margaret," Cole replied with a respectful nod. "Fine woman, sharp as a tack and twice as tough. We were all mighty sorry when she passed." Lucy felt a pang of regret. She had never met her aunt, only exchanged letters over the years. The news of Margaret's death had come with the surprising bequest of the millinery shop, a lifeline Lucy hadn't known she needed. "I'm here to take over her shop," Lucy explained, glancing down the street. "Could you point me in the right direction?" "Better than that," Cole said, reaching for the reins of her horses. "I'll show you the way. Your horses could use some water and rest, and I reckon you could too." Too tired to argue, Lucy allowed Cole to lead her wagon through the town. As they moved slowly down the main street, he pointed out the essential landmarks: the general store, the bank, the sheriff's office, and the saloon that doubled as a hotel. "And there's your aunt's place," he said, stopping in front of a modest storefront with a faded sign that read, "Zimmerman's Millinery." Above the shop was a small apartment where Lucy presumed she would be living. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson," Lucy said, climbing down from the wagon once again. "Cole," he corrected with an easy smile. "We don't stand much on formality here in Eldorado Canyon." "Cole, then," she agreed, surprising herself with the quick familiarity. "I appreciate the welcome." "I'll take your horses and wagon over to the livery," he offered. "Get them settled for the night. Your trunks can wait till morning." Lucy hesitated, then nodded. She was too exhausted to unload everything now anyway. She retrieved a small valise with her immediate necessities and watched as Cole clicked his tongue at her horses, guiding them down the street. The key to the shop was exactly where her aunt's lawyer had said it would be, under a loose board on the front step. Lucy unlocked the door and stepped into her new life. The shop was small but well organized, with shelves of ribbons, feathers, and hat forms lining the walls. A workbench stood near the window, taking advantage of the natural light. It smelled of straw and fabric, and faintly of the lavender sachets her aunt had apparently favored. A narrow staircase at the back led to the apartment above. It was simple: a bedroom, a small sitting room that doubled as a kitchen, and a tiny water closet that was a luxury in this part of the country. Lucy set her valise on the bed and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening town. Eldorado Canyon was nothing like Philadelphia with its cobblestone streets and gas lamps. Here, the darkness was absolute once the sun disappeared, broken only by the occasional lamplight from a window or the glow of the saloon down the street. The vastness of the sky above, scattered with stars so bright and numerous they looked like diamond dust, took her breath away. Lucy sank onto the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had done. She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to a place where she knew no one, to take over a business she knew little about. But what choice did she have? After her father's death and the discovery of his substantial debts, the family home had been sold. Her mother had gone to live with Lucy's older, married sister in Boston, but there had been no place for Lucy there. Her sister's husband had made that abundantly clear. So, when the letter had arrived from her aunt's lawyer, Lucy had seized the opportunity. Now, as she lay back on the unfamiliar bed, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Morning came with the harsh light of reality. Lucy rose early, washed as best she could with the pitcher and basin provided, and dressed in a fresh gown. Today she would take stock of the shop, see what supplies she had, and figure out how to run a millinery business. Her aunt's ledger would hopefully provide some guidance. A knock at the shop door startled her. It was too early for customers, surely. Lucy descended the stairs and found Cole Patterson standing outside, hat in hand. "Good morning," he said, his smile as warm as the early sun. "Thought you might like some breakfast before tackling all this." He held up a basket. "Mrs. Johnson at the boarding house puts together the best biscuits and gravy this side of the Mississippi." Lucy's first instinct was to refuse accepting food from a man she barely knew seemed improper, but the aroma wafting from the basket made her stomach growl audibly. "That's very kind of you," she said, stepping back to let him enter the shop. "I confess I hadn't thought about breakfast yet." Cole set the basket on the workbench, removing a checkered cloth to reveal biscuits, a small pot of gravy, and some sliced fruit. He had even brought coffee in a small tin pot. "Not very fancy," he apologized, "but it'll keep you going." "It's perfect," Lucy assured him, finding 2 cups on a shelf and wiping them clean with her handkerchief. She poured the coffee, strong and black, and handed one to Cole. They ate standing at the workbench, the morning light filtering through the dusty window. Cole told her about Eldorado Canyon, how it had boomed during the gold rush, and settled into a steady existence as the mines played out, how it was now supported by cattle ranching and the traffic of people passing through to California. "And what brought you here?" Lucy asked, curious about the man who had so quickly appointed himself her guide. "Cattle," he said simply. "Drove a herd up from Texas after the war. Decided I liked the place and stayed. Started with just a few horses, built up the livery bit by bit." The war. Lucy hesitated. The Civil War had ended 11 years ago, but its shadows still stretched long across the country. "You fought?" Cole nodded, his expression closing slightly. "Confederate cavalry, not something I talk about much these days." Lucy understood. Her family in Philadelphia had supported the Union, but she had seen enough of the war's aftermath to know that no side had emerged unscarred. "Your aunt," Cole said, changing the subject. "She came out here during the boom. Her husband was a miner who struck it moderately lucky, then lost it all in a bad investment. When he died, she opened this shop. Turned out she had a better head for business than he ever did." Lucy smiled, liking the sound of her aunt more and more. "I hope I can do her justice." "You will," Cole said with a confidence Lucy wished she shared. "Town needs a good milliner. Ladies still like their fancy hats, even out here in the wilderness." After breakfast, Cole helped Lucy bring in her trunks from the livery. He seemed in no hurry to leave, offering to help her clean the shop and organize her personal belongings upstairs. Lucy, who had been raised to be wary of strange men, found herself trusting Cole almost immediately. There was something steady about him, reliable in a way that reminded her of her father before drink and gambling had taken him. As the days passed, Lucy fell into a routine. She opened the shop each morning, worked on orders there were several waiting from before her aunt's death, and slowly met the women of Eldorado Canyon. They were a diverse group, from the genteel wife of the bank owner to the no-nonsense widow who ran the general store to the painted ladies from the saloon who needed fancy hats for their profession. Cole became a regular visitor, stopping by most mornings with coffee and news of the town. Lucy learned he was 31, had never married, and had a reputation as one of the most honest businessmen in the canyon. His livery stable was prospering, and he had started breeding horses on a small ranch just outside town. "You should come out and see it sometime," he suggested one morning, about 2 weeks after Lucy's arrival. "Sunday, maybe? I could bring the buggy around." Lucy hesitated. Going out alone with a man to his ranch seemed scandalous, even by the relaxed standards of Eldorado Canyon. But she had been cooped up in the shop day after day, and the thought of seeing more of the wild country around them was appealing. "That would be lovely," she found herself saying. "Sunday afternoon?" Cole's smile was worth any potential scandal. "Sunday it is." Sunday dawned clear and hot, the Nevada sun already intense by mid-morning. Lucy dressed carefully in a light blue gown that brought out her eyes, adding a straw hat she had trimmed herself with cornflowers and a cream ribbon. It was frivolous, perhaps, but she wanted to look her best. Cole arrived promptly at 2, driving a smart buggy pulled by a glossy bay horse. He had cleaned up as well, wearing a crisp white shirt under his vest and his boots polished to a shine. His eyes widened appreciatively when Lucy emerged from the shop. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, tipping his hat. "You look like a spring day." Lucy felt herself blush, unaccustomed to such direct compliments. "Thank you. You're looking quite dapper yourself, Mr. Patterson." The ride to Cole's ranch took them out of the canyon and into the rolling high desert. Cole pointed out landmarks along the way, a rock formation shaped like a sleeping giant, a creek that never ran dry, even in the hottest summers, a distant mountain range that marked the border with California. "It's beautiful," Lucy said, taking in the vast landscape. "Different from anything I've ever seen." "Takes some getting used to," Cole admitted. "All this space can make a person feel mighty small. But there's freedom in it, too." The ranch itself was modest but well-maintained. A small house built of local stone and timber stood near a corral and stable. A bunkhouse for the few hands Cole employed sat a little distance away, and beyond that stretched fenced pastures where horses grazed. Cole helped Lucy down from the buggy, his hands strong at her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. He showed her around with obvious pride, introducing her to his prize stallion, a magnificent black horse with a white star on his forehead. "This is Midnight," Cole said, stroking the horse's nose. "Best stud in the territory. His foals sell for top dollar." Lucy, who had always been fond of horses, approached cautiously. Midnight sniffed her hand, then allowed her to stroke his velvety nose. "He's beautiful," she said. "You've built something wonderful here." Cole's expression softened. "It's not much, but it's mine. Paid for free and clear." They walked around the property, Cole pointing out his plans for expansion, another corral, more grazing land, perhaps eventually a larger house. Lucy listened, caught up in his enthusiasm, and the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the future. One of Cole's hands, a weathered man named Tom, had prepared a simple supper, which they ate at a table set up on the porch. The food was basic beans, cornbread, and surprisingly tender beef, but the setting made it special. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land and painting the sky in vivid oranges and pinks, Lucy couldn't remember when she had last felt so content. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said, as they sat with coffee after the meal. "It's been a lovely day." "Been a pleasure having you," Cole replied. "Gets lonely out here sometimes." He looked at her, his gaze direct. "You planning to stay in Eldorado Canyon, Lucy? Or is this just a temporary stop for you?" The question caught her off guard. She hadn't thought much beyond the next day since arriving. "I don't know," she admitted. "I came because I had nowhere else to go, really. But I'm finding I like it here more than I expected." Cole nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "Good. Town could use more people putting down roots." They rode back to town as the first stars appeared, the air cooling rapidly as it tended to do in the desert. Lucy, who hadn't thought to bring a shawl, shivered slightly. Without a word, Cole wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer to his warmth. It was forward, perhaps, but Lucy found she didn't mind. There was something comforting about his solid presence beside her. As the weeks turned into months, Lucy's business began to thrive. She had a good eye for design and quickly learned the preferences of her customers. Her Eastern training set her apart, bringing a touch of Philadelphia fashion to the frontier town. Women came from as far as Carson City to order her hats, and she began to feel a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. Her friendship with Cole deepened as well. He took her on more outings, picnics in the canyon, rides to nearby landmarks, even a trip to Carson City when he had business there. Lucy found herself looking forward to their time together. The way his face lit up when he saw her, the sound of his deep laugh, the gentle way he offered his arm when they walked. It was during the autumn cattle drive that everything changed. Lucy had gone out to Cole's ranch to deliver a new hat for his foreman's wife, who was expecting a baby. Cole had been up since before dawn, helping to organize the herd for the long journey to the railhead. He looked tired but pleased to see her, taking a break to show her around the operation. "We'll be gone about 2 weeks," he explained as they walked among the milling cattle. "Tom's staying behind to keep an eye on things here, so if you need anything, just let him know." Lucy nodded, trying not to show her disappointment at the thought of Cole being away for so long. They had become such a part of each other's daily lives that his absence would leave a noticeable void. "Be careful," she said, unable to keep a note of concern from her voice. She had heard enough stories about the dangers of cattle drives, stampedes, river crossings, encounters with desperate men. Cole's expression softened. "Always am," he promised, reaching out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was intimate, his fingers lingering against her cheek. For a moment, Lucy thought he might kiss her, but one of the hands called out, needing his attention, and the moment passed. "I should get back to town," Lucy said, suddenly flustered. "I'll have someone drive you," Cole began, but Lucy shook her head. "I rode out on Daisy," she said, referring to the gentle mare she had recently purchased from Cole. "I'll be fine." Cole looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he simply nodded. "I'll see you when I get back then." "I'll be here," Lucy replied, and it struck her that she meant it more deeply than just a casual farewell. The 2 weeks of Cole's absence dragged interminably. Lucy threw herself into her work, creating more elaborate designs than usual, staying late in the shop until her fingers were sore from stitching. She took long rides on Daisy, exploring the canyon and the surrounding areas, always keeping an eye out for the returning cattle drive. It was a crisp October morning when word came that the drive was approaching town. Lucy tried not to appear too eager as she watched from her shop window, but as soon as she spotted the dust cloud on the horizon, she found herself reaching for her shawl and heading outside. The cattle came first, hundreds of them moving in a more or less orderly fashion, guided by tired cowboys on dust-covered horses. Cole rode at the front, his familiar figure straight-backed, despite what must have been an exhausting journey. When he spotted Lucy standing in front of her shop, his whole face transformed, weariness giving way to joy. He handed off his responsibilities to his foreman and rode over to her, swinging down from his horse with a fluid grace that belied his fatigue. "Lucy," he said, his voice warm with affection. "Best sight I've seen in 2 weeks." Before Lucy could reply, a commotion broke out down the street. A group of cowboys had started celebrating their return a bit too enthusiastically, firing pistols into the air outside the saloon. The sharp reports echoed off the canyon walls like thunder, startling the already nervous cattle. "Damn fools," Cole muttered, turning to see the cattle beginning to shift uneasily, some breaking away from the main herd. "Those cattle are tired and spooked. They need to calm down," he shouted to his men, trying to regain control, but it was too late. More shots rang out, and suddenly the entire herd was moving, fear spreading through them like wildfire. Within moments, what had been an orderly drive became a full-blown stampede directly down Eldorado Canyon's main street. "Get inside," Cole shouted to Lucy, but she was frozen in place, watching in horror as the massive wave of cattle bore down on the town. People scrambled for safety, diving into shops and behind water troughs. A woman with a young child stumbled in the street, directly in the path of the oncoming animals. Without thinking, Lucy ran toward them, ignoring Cole's shout. She reached the woman and child just as the first cattle thundered past, pushing them toward the relative safety of a recessed doorway. But as she turned to seek shelter herself, Lucy's foot caught on an uneven board, sending her sprawling into the dusty street. The ground trembled beneath her as hundreds of hooves pounded closer. Lucy tried to stand, but pain shot through her ankle. She looked up to see the terrifying sight of cattle charging directly at her, their eyes wide with panic. And then Cole was there, flinging himself off his horse and over her fallen form. His body covered hers completely as he pressed her into the dirt of the street, his arms forming a protective cage around her head. "Hold on," he gasped in her ear as the cattle thundered around them. Lucy closed her eyes, feeling Cole's heart hammering against her back, his breath warm on her neck. The noise was deafening, snorting, bellowing, the impact of hooves striking earth just inches away. Something struck Cole's shoulder, a glancing blow from a passing steer, and he grunted in pain but held his position, sheltering her with his own body. Lucy couldn't tell how long it lasted. Seconds or minutes stretched into an eternity of terror and the overwhelming awareness of Cole's protective embrace. Then, gradually, the thunder receded. The last stragglers of the herd passed them by, and Cole cautiously raised his head. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, his face inches from hers, eyes searching her features. "My ankle," Lucy managed. "I think I twisted it when I fell. But you're bleeding." A gash had opened on Cole's forehead, and his shirt was torn at the shoulder, blood seeping through the fabric. He dismissed her concern with a shake of his head. "Nothing serious." "Can you stand?" He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight when she winced at the pressure on her injured ankle. Around them, Eldorado Canyon was in chaos. The Stampede had left destruction in its wake, broken railings, overturned wagons, merchandise from the general store scattered across the street. Miraculously, it appeared no one had been seriously injured, though several people were nursing minor wounds and bruises. "You could have been killed," Cole said, as he half-carried her back toward her shop, his voice tight with what might have been anger or fear, or both. "What were you thinking running out like that?" "The woman and her child," Lucy said. "I couldn't just watch them get trampled." Cole's expression softened. "No, I suppose you couldn't." He paused at the steps to her shop. "That was the bravest, most foolish thing I've ever seen." Before Lucy could respond, he leaned down and kissed her, right there in the middle of the street with half the town watching. His lips were warm and insistent against hers, tasting of dust and relief, and something deeper that made Lucy's heart race faster than it had during the stampede. When he pulled away, they were both breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that since the day you arrived in this town," Cole admitted, his eyes never leaving hers. "What took you so long?" Lucy asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Cole's laugh was warm and rich. "Had to make sure you were staying, I suppose." He sobered. "When I saw you fall in front of those cattle, Lucy, I've never been so scared in my life. Not in the war, not ever." "You saved my life," she said simply. "And you've saved mine." "In a different way," he replied, so softly she almost didn't hear it. The doctor came by Lucy's shop later that day to examine her ankle just a sprain, thankfully, and to stitch the cut on Cole's head. News of their dramatic rescue spread through town like wildfire, embellished with each telling until one might have thought Cole had fought off the entire herd single-handed. Cole stayed with Lucy that evening, sitting in her small apartment above the shop, reluctant to leave her side. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for their futures. When he finally rose to leave, long after propriety dictated he should have gone, he paused at the door. "I love you, Lucy Zimmerman," he said, the words simple and unadorned, much like the man himself. "Have since about the third day you were in town. Just thought you should know." Lucy's heart swelled. "I love you too, Cole Patterson," she replied, the words coming easily, naturally, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to say them. He kissed her again, gentler this time, a promise rather than the desperate relief of their first kiss. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, "and the day after that, and all the days after that, if you'll have me." "I'll have you," Lucy assured him, and watched him go with the certainty that he would indeed return. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Lucy's ankle healed quickly, and she returned to her work with renewed energy. Cole came by the shop each day, sometimes just for a few minutes, sometimes staying to help her with small repairs and improvements he insisted the place needed. They ate supper together most evenings, either at the boarding house or in Lucy's apartment, and went for rides on Sundays, exploring the wilderness around Eldorado Canyon. Their courtship was the talk of the town, of course. Lucy had been something of a curiosity from the moment she arrived, an Eastern woman running a business on her own, But now she found herself the subject of even more speculation and interest. Most of it was good-natured. Cole was well-liked in the community, and people seemed genuinely pleased to see him settling down with a respectable woman. It was during one of their Sunday rides, about a month after the Stampede, that Cole brought his horse to a stop on a rise overlooking his ranch. Lucy halted Daisy beside him, admiring the view of the property spread out below them, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. "I've been thinking," Cole said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "This land, this ranch, it's a good place. Could be even better with the right touch." Lucy glanced at him, noting the way he fidgeted with Midnight's reins. "It's a wonderful place," she agreed. "You should be proud of what you've built here." "Thing is," Cole continued, looking at her directly now, "a man builds something like this. He starts thinking about the future, about who he might share it with, who might make it a home, and not just a place to hang his hat." Lucy's heart began to race as she realized where this conversation was heading. Cole swung down from his saddle and came to stand beside her horse, looking up at her with those storm-colored eyes that had captured her attention from the first day. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "Lucy Zimmerman, I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures. What you see is what you get with me. But what I feel for you is bigger than anything I've ever felt before. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life with you, here in this wild place that's somehow become home to both of us." He paused, swallowing hard. "Will you marry me, Lucy? Make this ranch a home? Make me the happiest man in Nevada territory?" Tears blurred Lucy's vision as she slid from Daisy's back into Cole's waiting arms. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I'll marry you, Cole Patterson." His kiss was tender and passionate all at once, his arms strong around her waist, lifting her off her feet in his enthusiasm. When he set her down, they were both laughing and crying a little. "I have something for you," Cole said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a ring with a modest diamond flanked by 2 small sapphires. "It was my mother's. My father gave it to me before he died. Said I should save it for when I found the right woman." Lucy held out her trembling hand, watching as he slid the ring onto her finger. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Perfect." They rode back to town, hand in hand, their horses ambling side by side, in no hurry to end their perfect day. The news of their engagement spread quickly, as news did in a small town. Lucy found herself accepting congratulations from customers and friends, showing off her ring and discussing wedding plans. They decided on a December wedding, giving them time to prepare, but not so long that they had to endure an extended engagement. Cole began work on expanding the ranch house, adding another bedroom, and enlarging the kitchen and sitting room to make it more suitable for a married couple. Lucy started setting aside special fabrics and trimmings for her wedding dress and making lists of what she would need to bring from her apartment above the shop. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with a light dusting of snow on the distant mountains, unusual for Eldorado Canyon, but fitting for a December wedding. Lucy dressed in the back room of her shop, helped by the banker's wife and the widow who ran the general store. Her gown was simple but elegant, ivory satin with lace at the collar and cuffs, and she wore a small hat she had designed herself, with a delicate veil that fell just past her shoulders. The ceremony took place in the small church on the edge of town, filled to capacity with nearly every resident of Eldorado Canyon in attendance. When Lucy walked down the aisle and saw Cole waiting for her, handsome in a new suit and with an expression of such naked adoration on his face, she knew without a doubt that all the twists and turns of her life had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Their vows were simple and heartfelt, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever hardships and joys the frontier life might bring them. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Cole's kiss was both reverent and possessive, a declaration to everyone present that they belonged to each other now and always. The celebration afterwards spilled out of the church and into the town, with tables set up in the street for a communal feast. There was dancing and singing, children running about with ribbons from Lucy's shop, and enough food and drink to feed the entire county. As the sun set, casting long shadows across their frontier town, Lucy found herself in a quiet moment with her new husband standing slightly apart from the festivities. "Happy, Mrs. Patterson?" Cole asked, his arm warm around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Lucy replied honestly. "When I came to Eldorado Canyon, I was just looking for a place to start over. I never imagined I'd find a home. And you?" Cole's smile was tender as he tucked her closer against his side. "When I covered you during that stampede," he said quietly, "I wasn't thinking about being brave or heroic. All I could think was that I couldn't lose you, that life wouldn't be worth much if you weren't in it." Lucy reached up to touch his face, tracing the small scar on his forehead from that day. "You didn't lose me. You won me, fair and square." Their first year of marriage passed in a blur of hard work and deep joy. They moved into the expanded ranch house, which Lucy transformed with curtains she sewed herself and furniture Cole built with his own hands. The millinery shop continued to thrive under Lucy's direction, with help from a young girl she had taken on as an apprentice. Cole's horse breeding business expanded, his reputation for quality stock spreading throughout the territory. Spring brought new foals to the ranch and new hope to their hearts. Lucy discovered she was expecting their first child, due in late autumn. Cole's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for: stunned joy followed by gentle concern for her well-being and endless plans for their expanding family. "We'll need to add another bedroom to the house," he said, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "And a proper nursery. And a rocking chair. You'll need a good rocking chair." Lucy laughed, covering his hand with hers. "We have time," she assured him. "The baby won't be here for months yet." But Cole was unstoppable in his preparations. He ordered books on child rearing from San Francisco, built a cradle of polished pine, and consulted with every mother in Eldorado Canyon about what Lucy might need. His protectiveness, while sometimes overwhelming, touched Lucy deeply. This man who had literally shielded her with his body during the stampede was just as determined to protect her and their unborn child from any possible discomfort. Their son was born on a stormy October night, with the wind howling down Eldorado Canyon and rain lashing the windows of their ranch house. He came into the world with a lusty cry and a shock of dark hair just like his father's. They named him Daniel, after Lucy's father, with Thomas as a middle name to honor Cole's father. "He's perfect," Cole whispered, cradling his newborn son with hands that seemed suddenly too large and rough for such a delicate task. His eyes, when they met Lucy's, were filled with wonder and gratitude. "Thank you for this gift, for everything." Lucy, exhausted but radiant, reached out to touch the tiny hand that had escaped the swaddling blanket. "We made him together," she said softly. "He's a part of both of us." Life with a baby brought new challenges and new joys. Daniel was a good-natured child with his father's steady temperament and his mother's curious eyes. Lucy scaled back her hours at the shop, taking Daniel with her when she did go into town. Cole rearranged his schedule to spend more time at home, often working with the baby, sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. As Daniel grew from infant to toddler, Lucy found herself pregnant again. Their daughter, Margaret Rose, named for both their mothers, was born in the spring of 1879 with her mother's chestnut hair and her father's storm gray eyes. Cole, if possible, was even more besotted with his daughter than he had been with his son, melting at her first smile and carrying her around the ranch for hours when she was fussy. The years passed in the rhythm of frontier life, the changing seasons, the cattle drives, the steady growth of both their businesses and their family. There were hard times, of course. A drought one summer threatened the cattle and horses. A fire in town damaged the millinery shop, though thankfully it was quickly contained. Cole broke his leg when a young horse threw him, leaving him irritable and confined to the house for weeks. But for every hardship, there were countless moments of joy: Daniel's first steps across the ranch house floor, Margaret's infectious giggle, the quiet evenings when the children were asleep, and Lucy and Cole sat on their porch, watching the sunset and talking softly about their days. The passionate nights when they reminded each other that beyond being parents and partners, they were still very much in love. In 1882, they welcomed their third child, another boy they named James Cole Patterson. By then, the ranch had expanded significantly, with Cole employing several full-time hands and breeding some of the finest horses in Nevada territory. Lucy had taken on a partner in the millinery business, a young widow named Sarah, who had moved to Eldorado Canyon with her own small child. The arrangement allowed Lucy to spend more time at the ranch while still keeping her hand in the business she had grown to love. Eldorado Canyon itself had grown as well, with new businesses opening and more families putting down roots. The wild frontier town Lucy had first encountered was evolving into a more established community. Though it still retained much of its rugged charm, she and Cole had become pillars of that community, respected for their hard work, their generosity in times of need, and their unwavering commitment to each other and their family. It was on their 10th wedding anniversary that Cole surprised Lucy with a trip back east. They left the children with Cole's trusted foreman and his wife, and traveled by train to Philadelphia, where Lucy showed Cole the city where she had grown up. They visited her mother and sister in Boston, introducing Cole to the family who had once thought Lucy foolish for venturing west. "I have to thank you," Lucy's sister Clara said privately to Cole during their visit, "for taking care of my sister, for making her happy." Cole shook his head. "I don't take care of her," he replied. "We take care of each other. That's what marriage is supposed to be, isn't it?" It was during their journey home, watching the landscape transform from the settled east to the wild expanses of the west, that Lucy truly appreciated how far she had come, not just in miles, but in life's journey. "Penny for your thoughts," Cole said, finding her gazing out the train window at the passing prairie. "I was just thinking about that day," Lucy replied. "The Stampede, how close I came to losing everything before I even knew what I had." Cole's hand found hers, his thumb brushing over the wedding band that had joined her engagement ring. "I still have nightmares about it sometimes," he admitted. "Seeing you fall, knowing those cattle were coming, and there wasn't time to get you to safety." "But you did save me," Lucy reminded him. "You covered me with your own body, risked your life for mine." "And I'd do it again in a heartbeat," Cole said without hesitation. "For you, for our children, for the life we've built." Lucy leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "When I came west, I thought I was just running away from what I'd lost. I never imagined all that I would find." "And I thought I was settled in my ways," Cole said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "A confirmed bachelor with my horses and my ranch. Then a pretty lady in a blue calico dress climbed down from a wagon, and suddenly my future looked completely different." They returned to Eldorado Canyon and the joyful chaos of their 3 children, to the ranch that had grown from Cole's modest beginnings into a thriving enterprise, to the community that had embraced them both. Life continued its steady flow. The children grew, the business prospered, the seasons turned. There were more children over the years, a 4th and 5th, 2 more boys who completed their family. There were grandchildren eventually, bringing new life and laughter to the ranch house that had been expanded several more times to accommodate their growing family. Through it all, the bond between Lucy and Cole remained unbreakable, forged in that moment of terror and courage during the Stampede, and strengthened by years of shared joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. They grew older together, watching their children take over more responsibilities on the ranch and in the millinery shop, which had expanded to include dressmaking and other services. On warm summer evenings, they still sat together on the porch of the ranch house, now with silver threading through their hair and lines of laughter marking their faces. Sometimes they spoke of the future, of their hopes for their children and grandchildren. Sometimes they reminisced about the past, their first meeting, their wedding day, the births of their children, and sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as the sun set over the land they had tamed together, casting long shadows across the flourishing ranch that had grown from Cole's dreams and Lucy's determination. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked her once, as they watched their oldest grandson lead a young colt around the corral, showing the same natural affinity with horses that Cole had passed down. "Coming west? Staying in Eldorado Canyon? Marrying a rough cowboy instead of some cultured Eastern gentleman?" Lucy turned to him, taking in the familiar beloved features of the man who had been her partner for decades. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the scar on his forehead, the permanent reminder of the day he had risked everything to save her. "Not for a single moment," she said softly. "This life we've built, this family we've created, this love we've shared, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. You're more than I ever dreamed possible." Cole's smile, as warm and genuine as the day they met, was all the answer she needed. In that smile was the promise he had kept for all their years together, to love her, to protect her, to build a life worthy of the trust she had placed in him when she accepted his proposal on that sun-drenched hillside so many years ago. The legacy they created together, a thriving ranch, a successful business, 5 children who grew into honorable adults, and a love story that became legend in Eldorado Canyon, began with a simple act of courage. A stampede that could have ended in tragedy instead became the foundation of a lifetime of happiness, all because a cowboy covered her body with his own.